I would like to start talking and having some discussion if you feel like making some comments, and I hope you do, about opening and perfecting of Bhumis, the good old awakening experience and awakening experiences known in all serious contemplative meditative paths, as well as awakening experiences also happen to people who are not practitioners, not even involved with any religion, um, and sometimes awakenings happen to people in very stressful situations. Could be just normal life situations, financial hardship, divorce, something like this, death of a relative or companion, uh, uh, being in battle, in war, awakening happens. But I wouldn't only want to talk about one awakening, but in plural, awakenings. These insight experiences that we discuss as Bhumi openings, openings of new grounds, literally, and then about how or what Bhumi perfections are. So the reason why I think it's good to discuss in between practice sessions, and I was listening to a podcast interview of one Buddhist teacher just before we started, and he discussed about awakening experience in singular, and then he discussed the 10 fetter model, which is the path map in Hinayana Buddhism, classical small vehicle Buddhism. And then I started thinking, we just recently had a teacher's lounge in Facebook. We have a closed group for the teaching staff, and we had a discussion about Hinayana or Theravada level awakening or attainment, the end attainment of Hinayana Theravada path, which is called Arhathood, A-R-H-A-T, Arhat. So, their goal is to become Arhats. And so we had a discussion about it, and we looked at we've done it before, we've looked at images of Theravada practitioners, the famous ones, who are teachers or considered masters in that tradition. And we did some Bhumi analysis and feeling into the energy of people who are Theravada practitioners and who likely, even though it's not customary to speak of attainments in general in Buddhism, in Theravada or anywhere else in Buddhism, it is likely that people who are considered masters, in that tradition are arhats. And there are definitely conclusions that I've come to myself, conclusions that you can have if you start analyzing, systematically feeling into the mind, meaning, the energy field of Theravada practitioners, and then comparing with Mahayana practitioners, Mahayana teachers, Mahayana masters. So I'm kind of just trying to give some kind of introduction to this topic by talking about this thing from here and there. In that interview that I was listening to, so it was a Zen teacher who was interviewed. And interestingly, he, Zen is a Mahayana Buddhist school. Mahayana great vehicle, which means that it is this compassion, practicing to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all others is the motivation of all Mahayana systems, including Zen Buddhism. And so he said in the interview that he uses the 10 fetter model in his teaching, which was kind of interesting because, 10 fetter model is, you can find it if you type in 10 fetters or 10 fetter model in Google, you can find what it means. So it's about eliminating the 10 fetters that are, dualistic knots in our mind stream that causes us to see in dualistic terms. And when these 10 fetters are removed, one attains this arhathood. But then interestingly, I didn't listen all of the interview, but I listened enough where he was also talking about Mahayana, and he didn't mention bodhicitta at all. And I guess the reason why I wanted to talk about this and have a discussion about this is to really consider what is the meaning of Buddha Dharma. I was also thinking of demonstrating to you because in our 13 Bhumi path map, the Arhat level corresponds to perfection of the 6th Bhumi, 1 through 6. And as you know, these are the centers, energy body inside the physical body. So it's kind of, this stage is, if you start studying this, comparing these different masters, start to tune into them, you will feel that there is a sense of confinement in the physical body. And inside the body, it's bright and nice, but it's kind of restricted by the borders of the physical body, this Arhat stage. But then, I don't have a problem if anybody, wants to stay at Arhat stage or finish practice at 6th perfection. We have, I think, few people here joining who have reached that stage. But like I said, I wanted to discuss the meaning, the depth of Buddha Dharma in general, because there's much more to go. And again, I need to add that, this is a very vaguely discussed topic in any school of traditional Buddhism. Attainments and stages are hinted at, they are spoken about with more or less clarity. But when it comes to discussing attainments of somebody who's alive and, really discussing and analyzing, contemplating, how does it feel for you who have attained 6th Bhumi perfection or the first opening? How does it feel for you? Tell us, how does it feel like? How is it different now than it used to be? And what is the benefit of having this degree of awakening that you've come to? Such discussion is almost completely absent in the world of Buddhism, in the world of non-Buddhist dharmas as well. And this is, of course, something that we try to establish with pragmatic dharma, because it's very useful and very, very beneficial for everybody involved. So I was saying that 13 Bhumi model, I have plans of writing some kind of, verbal descriptions of, what do you work with different Bhumis. And in my book, What's Next, I've actually given like um, a psychological anatomy of the mind, how the mind is, what the mind is, what different parts are in the mind, and how the um, well, what I intend to do in the next edition of What's Next book is that it would explain more verbally, bring together a traditional understanding of Bhumis and or fetters, and then the energetic reading, which is of course intuitive. But anybody who's learning energy reading or Bhumi reading needs to develop this intuitive part in oneself. And usually women are better at this than men. Not always, but usually. And of course, if somebody has experience from energy healing, such as Reiki, where you learn to sense energies and do healing with it, such a person has a bit headway in Bhumi study because one is already familiar with that concept and that experience. But reading Bhumis is a subjective skill that has to be developed through one's own first-hand practice. So there's one analogy that is often used is that in a different context is that when we go to a restaurant and we read a menu of different foods, it is enough to just read the menu like scholars and academics do. They just study the scriptures and talk about scriptures. But the point of going to a restaurant is to read the menu, decide what you're going to have, and then eat and taste that food so that it fills your belly and nourishes you. And in the same way, in What's Next book, I've explained what Bhumis are and what Bhumi reading is. But that's it, It also explains the locations of Bhumis and gives some general descriptions how it feels like. But from there, one has to take it into practice. From there, it is pointless to just keep reading the book without this intuitive part of study. And it is an interesting thing because the mind where awakening and enlightenment happens is a completely abstract thing. Here we have physical body and I can touch it and bite it and taste it and smell it, and I can do that with anything physical, concrete thing. But I can't do any of it with my mind. And this is always and will remain a big challenge because, even if Joe, if I was just Joe's friend, and then Joe had an awakening experience one day, and he came to me and said that, you know what, Kim, I've experienced this, I've had this awakening experience, and I feel completely different now. And because I cannot see it, at least I cannot see it without training, I might say that, oh Joe, that's total nonsense. That's just some weird, crazy idea you have in your mind. There's no such thing as awakening, or if there is an awakening, I'm sure you haven't had that experience, so just forget it. Let's just drink this tea. And so that's the challenge with, and will remain a challenge with internal experience, because it is not possible to see that without training. But that's the whole point. If one has training, then it is possible to not only to understand one's own internal experience, but understand and see the internal experience of others. And it seems that, you know, just a few days ago, I wrote a bit in Facebook about the, I would say, almost total absence of intuition and development of intuition in Buddhist practice. It's almost completely not there. And I think that's because, Buddhism has been around for 2,500 years roughly, and it has developed into many, many directions, and Buddhist practitioners have come up with, being a very strong male-dominated tradition as a whole. It has developed very good systems and methods and explanations and given commentaries. So that's exactly what men are good at. Men are good at figuring things out, sorting things out, and kind of like mechanical engineering, explaining things. But one thing that is missing in the vast majority of Buddhism is intuition. There are some exceptions, like my dear Zen master Terayama Sensei. He was also a Zen calligrapher, and as you know, he was the one who introduced me to energy reading through Zen calligraphy and Buddhist art. So that's just an example. Others in Japan are also doing this in relation to Zen and Buddhist art. They feel if we are talking about a calligraphy or a painting done by a famous master, people know to feel the energy, receive the blessings through that energy charge from that work, rather than just look at the characters, Chinese written characters, and to contemplate on the philosophical meaning of those. So that's one example. And then there are intuition in Buddhism. There is the tradition of tertons in Tibet, and well, there are big tertons and small tertons. So tertons are these people, men and women, who receive teachings from non-physical masters and non-physically. And so this has a lot to do with openness. It has a lot to do with karmic connection. It has a lot to do with clarity of mind, but it also has a lot to do with intuition. And I would also like to add that according to a Tibetan Buddhist terton, Kunzang Decheng Lingpa, who lived until he passed away like 12 years ago or something like that. He said that, I have the direct quote in my blog, he said that, really the main requirement for revealing dharma, for receiving teachings non-physically, is to have loving devotion towards Guru Rinpoche. That's what he said, according to one of his main students. Well, there must be some other minor indication of use of intuition in Buddhism, but my point is that Buddhism is a large, huge culture really, and there is really no training in the use of intuition, not really even mention of it, because men have already figured it out. So we have the map, we have the books, We have the know-how transmitted through the tradition, through many centuries, and that's all we have to focus. Perhaps that is the case. Perhaps that works for some, but when it comes to that seeing directly, perceiving directly our own advancement of awakening, it means that we have to be able to feel our subtle body, our energy body, which means we need to be able to perceive our body made of Bhumis. And also, if we really want to have like a, how should I say, like a, how should I say this, like a, I think it would be highly useful to have a system that enables us to see the attainments of others, see exactly where our Sangha members are, see where our teachers are, see where our masters are, because that's direct first-hand yogic knowledge of the very essence of Dharma. This is not reading the menu in a restaurant anymore. This is directly perceiving and understanding through that first-hand experience what Buddha Dharma is about and how it relates to people around us. That's a very important one. Any comments at this point? Do you have anything you could share about Bhumi reading?
I think something I've noticed with myself and other people as well trying to read Bhumis is that there's often this first reaction to the person that they're looking at and like projecting something onto them, which seems to get in the way of their intuition. And I've had that experience myself when looking at someone's appearance first and forgetting that it's not about the appearance, or it's not about like how we normally look at people or perceive people. So it's kind of trying to get beyond that type of mind and just purely use intuition. So for me, I'm still kind of there with intuition, like trying to remember to use intuition, because the kind of judgmental mind comes first and can be quite dominant. So have to be able to sort of recognize that and kind of drop that or let that go and tune into intuition more. So I'm very much still at that place, really.
I'll make a comment about that, because that exactly is what a lot of our Sangha members who are learning to read Bhumis struggle with, and what I've struggled with also. I've been doing this for 16, 17 years, and it took me a long time to get past that one. So we might be looking at a piece of art made by a meditator. Let's just use that general term. We might be looking at a picture of a pilgrimage site, Or we might be looking at an image of some practitioner. Teachers are also practitioners, or good teachers are practitioners. So what we need to do is that we kind of need to become like a blank slate without preconceptions, without prejudgment. Is that a word? Prejudgments. Like dropping everything, completely relax and open, and most importantly, in receptive mode. If we are not open and receiving, then we won't be able to catch the information that is coming to us. So, like I often use when doing Guru Yoga, for example, I use the analogy of, imagine that you are lying on a blanket on a beach on a summer day and the sun is shining. So you automatically receive the sunshine. You receive the light and warmth in the light. So you don't have to think about it. You're automatically open for it. Nobody, well, maybe somebody who doesn't like sunbathing goes to the beach and kind of just wants to stay away from the warmth, perhaps because it's too hot or something. But most people, we don't have to think about it at all. We just open and sunbathe, enjoy the sun, or on the balcony, or summer day in general. So it's the same thing, and in that, when we learn to do that, so we are, let's say we are using a picture of some ancient temple, for example, as our study material. So we have an image of the temple in physical photo or on a device, and then we become that blank slate. Then we are watching with our physical eyes, feeling, looking, perceiving, with our whole body, feeling, receiving the subtle charge of that object, in this case temple, in the image. And we receive, we let that information, we let the vibration of that place come to us. And this is the reason, countless masters have said it, that it's very beneficial to have pictures of deities, pictures of Buddhist symbols or Buddhist symbols, pictures of pilgrimage sites, pictures of spiritual masters in our home, on our walls. This is the reason. Because there is a stream of blessings coming through. So if we can drop that preconceptions, if we can drop our busyness and just simply nakedly receive, then our body picks it up, just like it is in Guru Yoga. As you know, sometimes people struggle with in the beginning of tantric practice because they are not used to sensating the presence of gurus, or they're not used to feeling deities. So it can be difficult in the beginning, but once you get used to it, you understand that, oh, I just have to relax. And you're not going to sleep, you're not going away in terms of being present. You stay present, but you stay open. Sort of like let the music come to you, listening to the music. And it comes automatically. And the body picks it up. And when the body picks it up, it means that the subtle body picks it up. we are not touching, I'm not touching physically that temple, I'm looking through a picture. That's a different experience. It's our subtle body that picks it up. And that body is made of bhumis, made of energy centers, energy vibratory fields. So then the way how Bhumi analysis is done is that, as you know, there are 6 small centers from the level of the eyes to top of the head that relate to the first 6 Bhumis. And then we have the same Bhumi centers in all 4 limbs. But to do Bhumi analysis, whether open or perfected, we only really need to look at these. We can also feel into the Bhumi centers in the limbs, or to the aura with Bhumis from 7 onwards. But it can all be done from this pillar. First 6 inside the head, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 above the head. And of course 11, 12, 13 a bit higher. So Bhumi analysis can all be done here. So as you know, if there has been an awakening experience, authentic, major breakthrough, there will be a hole in these Bhumi centers. Typically, when somebody wakes up through the 2-part formula and the first has the first awakening experience, the Bhumi plate is usually about this open, like 1.5 centimeters, roughly. Sometimes it can be very, very small, maybe just a few millimeters. Somebody who's practiced for a long time, years or even decades, they might have a 2 inches. So it's like a big opening. But in one sense, it doesn't matter how open it is, as long as there is a hole, because that hole changes perspective. We can imagine that if there is a wall in front of us and there is no hole on the wall, we can't see what is on the other side of the wall. But if there is even a small hole of 0.5 centimeter, we can look through it and see what's on the other side. So it makes a big difference. There might be something interesting on the other side. So we get to know about it. Learning to read Bhumi openings is simply placing our attention, perceiving, intuiting a certain Bhumi location and tuning into it and letting that present condition again, like through intuition, let it kind of be revealed by itself. So if we are looking at somebody else's picture, we become a blank slate, tune in, let the information come. It takes a moment for the vibration of that body and that mind to come to us, and then we start feeling our own Bhumis, which are now reflected from the other person, from the other person's energy body. Then we start feeling that how many Bhumis are open. And we only need to be all ears, all eyes. Simply be focused on it. And the answer will drop on your lap automatically. You don't have to start figuring out, where is it? I can't really get it. Can I see it? Can I see it? Nothing like this. Just be open and receptive. And when it comes to Bhumi perfections, reading perfections, it's the same thing. The way how, the way how I've experienced this is that um, when there is an opening of a Bhumi, there is a hole in a plate. In what's next, there's a picture of a stack of plates, like eating plates, and it's sort of like that. These Bhumi centers here are not only small dots, like they are graphically depicted in the book. Um, they are plates that they are vibratory fields of vibration. So when a Bhumi is open, there's a hole in that plate, and through that hole shines this clarity of the natural state, clarity of Buddha nature. Buddha nature, by the way, doesn't discern between arhats and Buddhas. It's just that arhats see Buddha nature up to a certain level, but not beyond that. Maybe I'll come back to that later. But so when reading Bhumi perfections, there is a plate, there is a border. If the Bhumi isn't yet perfected, Bhumi can be open this much, more, but as long as we feel a border to it, that means that a Bhumi is not perfected. If we feel that from that first Bhumi level, for example, we hit some kind of edge, just like we feel the edge of our aura, then it tells that Bhumi is not perfected. So we hit an edge. And if we use 13 Pure Land meditations as a way to see if our Bhumi or Bhumis are perfected or not, if it is not perfected, that residual border or edge when meditating the deity of the particular Bhumi, which is Amitabha Buddha on the first one, it will generate that a kind of intoxicating, gross, blissful experience. If the Bhumi is perfected, meditating Amitabha Buddha on the first Bhumi, it simply feels like very clear, very pure, and has a very subtle blissfulness to it, but not gross bliss to it. And then we have, of course, 13 deities for each 13 Bhumis to measure this state of perfection. That was a long and winding comment to your... Carl, go ahead.
Manas's question also illustrates a different point, that because you used, Manus, you used the word projecting. So that of course happens quite a lot. But even if it's not projecting, it might be irrelevant to the Bhumi situation in one sense, because I think a lot of the problem in the general scene of spirituality is ideas about what enlightenment is. So as you say, Rinpoche, it's like it's simply the clarity or non-clarity. But I think that people get confused because of different personalities and different starting points in relation to. So you have 2 or 1 million people at Bhumi 0. They will have different starting points in terms of what they experience as problematic or positive or whatever. So I think in Western psychology, there is this good personality test or well, it's a test, but it's like a categorization model using it's called the Big Five. So it has 5 different major categories and then subcategories. For example, you have positive emotions, you have neurotic, negative emotions, you have openness to new ideas, conscientiousness like work discipline and stuff like that. And it varies from person to person. So I think a person, say a person who has perfected 6 Bhumis, or 2 people who have perfected 6 Bhumis, one person is a very positive person who does not experience many negative emotions, and then the other person is somebody who experiences a lot of negative emotions and perhaps not many positive emotions. They can still have that same level of clarity because it's separated from the actual content. So I'm making a dualistic notion of content and clarity, but it's it's the recognition of the nature of the content that is the main thing. So even if somebody does seem like if somebody is to read a Bhumi situation and then they feel that there is anger or they feel that there is some insincerity, there it could still be on a high level of attainment. So I just wanted to make that point because it's something that I've been wondering how to verbalize for a long time. And not many people speak of it because, and I think especially in relation, and this is my main problems with that Fetter model, because it seems to me, I haven't studied it that well, so I might be making things up or misunderstanding it, but it seems too rigid in its categorization, that somehow you're supposed to get rid of anger at a certain level. And in my case, it's just not reality. Yeah,
that is also, I perfectly agree with that. But one thing that is interesting is that, and this is a critical point on methods, that you know it is the case that in Tantra, teachers point out things, and different methods, path maps, they point out things. But it's only when things are pointed out to us when we notice things. So not all methods have that. I'm just saying that, not all methods work in the same way. Things are not pointed out in one way or the other. This is actually quite interesting because I was talking about I've talked with many Zen Buddhists on different Zen internet forums on this perceiving the blessings in the prayers, daily prayers, through daily prayers. And ever since I learned to feel and perceive subtle energies and blessings, which really is the presence of Buddha nature from my Zen master, I witnessed it so many times in different Buddhist groups, not only Zen Buddhist, but in many Zen Buddhist groups, that basic prayers, mantras, sutras, dharanis, names of the lineage masters are daily recited, and there's this beautiful, immense flood of blessings, but nobody notices them because it's not pointed out. So actually, I shouldn't say that nobody notices it, because I have met 2 or 3 people who still practice Zen who have noticed it, but because it's not transmitted by the tradition, it's not spoken of by the teachers, 99.9% of practitioners don't notice it, that it's there every day. yeah, I guess that's what all I meant to say. But that's also the case in Tantra often, that it's not pointed out as it should be and could be pointed out in empowerments and in practice sessions and so on. There was actually something that came to our mind yesterday when we were practicing, that Sivakami, she used to talk of, I didn't understand it at the time, because when I started studying with her, I had already done 4 years of Buddhist training in Zen. I didn't really understand her point at the time, but she was, well, not, she just made the point that Buddhists are over-chanters, that they over-chant. And that's an interesting thing, because was it yesterday or the day before, when this is the 6th day, so it was 4th or 5th day of our retreat, and I think it was actually yesterday when we started with Krishna practice. We chanted, no, was it Babaji? We started with Babaji and we chanted Babaji's mantra. And I felt that right afterwards, I felt that actually that chanting made it more difficult to perceive the subtlety of Babaji's presence, because of that, physical voice is grosser element than subtle voice. And now, by day 5, the whole group is already quite clear and calm in the mind. So it was kind of a disturbance to chant aloud. Because if we had chanted silently, like we did with the following gurus, Patanjali and Krishna, then that subtlety was there. But it also, I could feel that it came back after we had chanted, but it just took its time before this gross feel dissipated. But that's what she was saying, the Sivakami was saying with over chanting, that if we chant too much, it dulls the perception of subtlety.
Basically being stuck in outer form, or getting stuck in the outer form of practice.
Yes.
And I think that the focus on numbers also contributes to this. Like you hear about great masters having chanted 1 billion times, and then you get stuck in the, oh, you need to chant 1 billion times too.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Carl, yeah, just on your point, I think it's a good point. What you said about Western psychology, personality, and predispositions in terms of personality and character, and then you have attainments, and not to judge people's level of attainment via their personalities, I think that's a good point. But surely attainments bring personality change with insights. If Bhumi openings and shifts, they're insights. So surely personalities, a practitioner's personality will change as you proceed, as you progress. Just because, what I heard you sort of say was that you can have someone who's, in neurosis and negative emotions and still have you know, 6 Bhumis open, 6 perfected, or, you know, high level. And then you can have someone who is, you know, open, positive emotions, you know, sort of. But surely as you go through, you know, up in attainments, and you're someone who's predisposed to negative, you know, as you practice and you gain insight into those, you know, states, that you'll transform as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, I understand what you mean. I would say that personality will, I don't think it changes, but of course, the experience of it and the experience, like it won't be negative emotions like we have discussed, for example, with these neurotic stuff. It will be, then that will be wrathful expressions instead. But my, the point was also that you don't necessarily go from having if you are kind of flat on the positive emotions and not so, and very neurotic as the starting point. In my mind, it doesn't make any sense that that would be a like bubbling Buddha. That would be a more wrathful Buddha with still like the positive emotions, not like overflowing in that sense. So the personality would just be come to its original form instead of being tainted by self-based, by the center, by the I. That's how I view it. But I don't think you can't expect to completely change the personality, but it won't be a of course, if we're talking about Buddhahood, it won't be a problem anymore. There won't be any shit left, in my experience, not having attained Buddhahood yet.
I think you just made the claim, Connor.
I realized.
Did that guy just claim being a Buddha? Did I hear it right?
Everything I said up until now, fuck it.
I'd probably like to just wind it back in my experience a bit to right to the beginning of practice, when I was completely in my head and completely unaware of my body. And that, I think that's largely because in the West we have so much emphasis put on academic learning.
Mm.
Intuition side is almost completely ignored.
Mm.
I think initially there's quite a lot to be done into sensing the body, first of all. And I think for me, like Tai Chi helped with that as well, because you're actually sensing another person's energy when you do push hands.
Mm.
Yield to the other person's energy. And that yielding is quite important as well, because that's more of a sort of a feeling thing. And the rational mind can be quite rigid. So to start to, get that sensitivity started, I think for me, that was the beginning of it. I just wanted to sort of wind it back just to.
Yeah, certainly. And if we, I started to think of, I saw this brilliant documentary of one of my favorite Finnish dancers called Jorma Uotinen, just like a week ago. And in relation to that documentary, even in arts in the West, in training, art training, dancing, music, everything, intuition is downplayed, or it's, we have systems, so it kind of overrules that intuitive part. Also in sports, actually, I see it, I follow winter sports specifically in winter, and when they interview coaches and then the athletes, it's weird hearing that they kind of have no clue what is going on in their body, except that, well, my this or that muscle didn't work today, or it failed me today. It's like it sounds so weird hearing that somebody who's that level professional is kind of completely out of tune with the body and the sensations. Our body tells us what is good and what is not, or our subconscious tells it to us if this is good or not. So yeah, definitely.
That's why you have all the injuries,
Mm.
or many of them could be prevented.
Yeah. And not only in professional athletes. It's like if you go to the jogging trail or go to the local gym, you see people do that. They just, they have a very rigid sense of what working out means.
I think one of the main, for myself in my experience, the main points of intuition is confidence and a sense of capability that one can do it. You mentioned if you haven't pointed out something, you might not notice it. So it's actually an empowerment. The empowerment is that you have the discovery of this power in you.
Yes.
And then with that you can work. And I think this aspect of personal or individual authority or power is extremely downplayed in Buddhism. With like Bhumis, it needs a Buddha to recognize awakening, or it needs a Buddha to read someone's attainment.
Yeah.
That's the easy way out. Okay, please, that's none of my business. It needs a Buddha, and up until we have a Buddha around, we will never know where someone stands on the ladder of attainment.
Yeah.
And that's what I found so strikingly beautiful and empowering, actually, in the Pemako way of teaching, that this empowerment aspect actually comes through, that you are empowered to do that. You are empowered to read, to make that seeing happening for yourself from authority, from your own Buddhahood.
Yes, that is absolutely right.
It reminds me of in Teacher's Lounge. So Rinpoche sometimes posts things for students to feel into, not necessarily Bhumi wise, but just podcast episodes or whatever. And there were some comments on one, and then I think you, Kim, wrote your opinion, and then one of the ladies who hadn't commented immediately after, like, yes, I knew that was what you were you were looking for, like that, or that was the right perception of it, but she hadn't dared. She hadn't trusted her own intuition then to actually share it. And from my own experience, that happens all of the time. That not daring to trust what seems very clear, but it's just this fear of being wrong.
Yeah, and if we look at the psychological anatomy of that exact situation, that knowledge comes from partial recognition of the reality, a reality body, meaning that Buddha nature is involved partially in that. But there is the subconscious mind that somehow distorts it, somehow doesn't feel safe, somehow creates this inconfidence. Is that the word? Inconfidence? Unconfidence. Yeah. And then the rational mind, expresses it. in the shape of thoughts. That's always the case with doubt. That is always the case, except that, well, unless Buddha nature is absent. Yeah.
I've had that experience a few times
Mm-hmm.
when trying to use intuition for my own shifts or other things, but like what you said, where there's the voice of intuition, like there's a moment when it happens and it picks up intuitively whatever the right thing is, but then yeah, the other part of the mind that wants to be right, that has this expectation or just thinks that it's about being right. And for me, like it should be really obvious and really easy to notice that intuitive part, because it's like it's actually quite clear. So I don't know, like sometimes, but I still manage to miss it. I still manage to kind of ignore it until afterwards. And sometime later I go, oh, that intuitive voice did speak up, but I kind of ignored it and went with the self, that had another idea. And so for me, it's like, I don't know if it's a confidence thing or an ego thing or something, like it's I don't know, but I think just maybe being familiar with how that process happens and repeat it, like trying a few times again, kind of might get easier to listen to the intuitive voice. So I think it's definitely there. Like, I don't know if it has to be developed. Like, I think it's there, but for me, it's about paying attention to the intuitive voice, or like, noticing it. I think it's always been there throughout my life, this intuitive side.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's that I don't trust it, or I don't pay enough attention to it, or I don't know how or when to notice it, or to really give it what it deserves, the attention it deserves.
And that is something that, in my experience, develops as clarity of mind increases. Like myself personally, I've been a very driven person always. If there was something that I liked, I dove into it with full attention. And because of having that kind of very fiery drive, I've so many times missed so many details. But recognition of Buddha nature, it kind of, well, not kind of, it what it does is that, even though, well, it's that liberation of our negative states becoming dynamic energy. There it is, that when those basic drives coming from samsaric motivations and confusions, when they cease, our mind becomes clear, and in that clarity it's very easy to see and perceive things and pick up things intuitively. But part of what you said is yes, training more in intuition, but also understanding the obstacles. Yeah, looking into the obstacles. What is actually now obstructing? Is that the word? Obstructing my clarity of perception to just letting it happen. That is a big one. Has been for me also.
I think this is exceptionally important in our time, where we are leaning towards a relativist notion of that there isn't any real truth, that it's just subjective opinions. But what we're actually saying here is that everybody can align with reality and see the situation clearly. This like separated from self-based distorting filters.
Yes, and that is an interesting point when we look back into earlier. The basic definition is that Dharma is about the mind, to some degree about the physical body, but it's mainly about the mind. And your mind you cannot see, taste, touch through the physical body, and this confuses people. But it's like you said that, you know, everybody has Bhumis, and openings of Bhumis are universal, really universal in all traditions. So we are talking about reality and degrees of perceiving reality just as it is. It's pointless to debate whether that happens or not. Well, you can debate if you don't see the reality, if you haven't had those shifts, but if you had, it should make sense instantly, unless views or opinions distort it, of course. But when this distortion happens, skewing happens, then we are no longer in touch with the reality. I think that in the first edition of What's Next, in the introduction, I said that no established tradition of Buddhism, no, that's a different part what I said. I said that, well, it is true that according to what I've been told by 2 Buddhist scholars and then few different Tibetan Vajrayana teachers, that nobody in Tibetan Vajrayana, and as far as I know also in Mahayana, nobody uses Bhumis as a path map. Nobody at the moment. So it's kind of like Bhumis are discussed in sutras such as Avatamsaka Sutra and many other texts. But it's kind of forgotten section of Buddhist mapping. I would say entirely forgotten. It's kind of bits and pieces of it are still there, but the know-how of it is gone, long gone. So in the introduction of my book, I've said that, you know, our 13 path map and then the traditional Bhumis in Buddhism are 2 different things. And I said that 2.5 years ago because there was so much flack that I was taking, so much bad attention that myself and Pemako and the whole Bhumi thing got, because people were so opinionated that they couldn't even start to consider whether this was possible or not. So that's why I said it. But I guess I've matured enough to say that we are talking about the same Bhumis. We are talking about a path from unawakened state to full Buddhahood. So these Bhumis are not different than what the traditional sources say. Having said that, you know, over time, scriptures, they are changed, altered, and often the language is it aggrandized? Is that the word? Is it grandized or aggrandized?
Aggrandized, I think, yeah.
Aggrandized. So it's sort of like cat. When a dog chases cat into a corner, the cat goes sideways and looks bigger and more evil and more scary than it actually is. It's exactly what happens with classical scriptures, that when the experience of those things discussed in the text is lost, then people start thinking funny things about what is said in the text, and then they rewrite it, and before you know it, it's something that only happened in the past to very special people, and people nowadays, it's completely irrelevant to our experience or our Dharma practice, which makes no sense at all. So, this is what has happened with classical Bhumi, traditional Bhumi sources in notable degree. But having said that, we are talking about the same Bhumis. No doubt about it. There was something else I should mention, but I forgot it now.
There was a discussion on Facebook. I think it was Helena who was posting in some group, Vajrayana group, and the topic was Bhumis. And I think somebody mentioned that getting stuck in just the basic names of the various Bhumis, and there's this really short description usually that follows. So at this level, you can multiply your body 1,000,000 times, and at that level, it's 10 million times. And it's just, I have no clue what it means, even poetically, it just doesn't make any sense. But she said that it doesn't make any sense, and I don't experience any of that stuff. And the conclusion of the other person was that, oh, well, then you're not on the Bhumis. So that seems to be the level of discussion in the traditional scene.
No, that is not correct. In the sense that I don't think it's the level of discussion in the traditional scene. It's the level of discussion by Orthodox Buddhist purists.
Yeah.
And of course, those people exist everywhere in every field. So, but yeah, that's.
But my experience is that it's nothing like that, and one of the main benefits of going through the Bhumis is that the distinction between absolute and relative is wiped out, so that it becomes so ordinary, like it's just the most ordinary thing, and it has to do with this, in the end, in one way, it's just stable, clear, and completely ordinary.
Something that perhaps because we recently discussed this at Teachers Lounge from the Arhat perspective, and then I was listening to that talk earlier today, I've been kind of reflecting how would I explain my own experience as a Mahayana practitioner who is now, closing to my karmic purification, my transformation process. And so my perception of Arhat stage, of sixth Bhumi perfection, is that it's very enclosed and defined by the borders of the physical body. And it kind of sounds, what I mean by that is not that, if we do body scanning practice, somebody who listens to this might have practiced mindfulness meditation and have done a lot of body scanning. And this brings, like we discussed yesterday in relation to Patanjali's transmission, that it makes the body feel in a certain way. And what I mean by that, if I speak from my own experience about sixth Bhumi perfection, is that yes, there is some similarity with that experience. I also had it back in my Zen days when all I did was count my breaths with really deep, lengthened breath. So it gave this physical sense of one type, but it's not all what is meant with when we discuss this Arhat stage and being defined by the physical body. There is sense of, I wouldn't use the sense openness or spaciousness at all. It's well, one way how Hinayana and Mahayana are defined in terms of fruition in practice is that Hinayana is about gross selfing, and Mahayana is about emptiness of all phenomena. And I've been contemplating this, that how would I explain what I feel as through after more than 9 perfections. How I perceive, how I would explain the difference between 6 perfections and 9 and some perfections. What is the difference between gross selfing, being seen empty, selfless, or emptiness, what I'm closing to as emptiness of all phenomena? And it's certainly we are discussing always, we are talking about relief, immense existential relief. So the more we see through our self-based thinking, self-based emotional reactions, the freer we feel. It's simply like a relief, shedding off that entity that reactions to things and takes stances, stands for something and opposes another. So that selfing with the first 6 Bhumis, it gradually goes away, drops off. But maybe I would say that when then going beyond the first 6, maybe I would start talking, I would say that spaciousness or openness is the main defining character. And it simply happens, in Mahayana we have bodhicitta, and bodhicitta enables us to have a material for insight in the subtlemost energy body, in the subtlemost parts of the mind. So, but this openness and spaciousness that I'm talking about, it's not like having more space or having more room. It's more like it's a contradictory feeling, that it's kind of like disappearing of space instead, disappearing of openness. So it's not like I'm in a big open space, I'm living my daily life in this vast open space. It's not like that. It's sort of like the space is there and it's not there at the same time. Actually, it's not there at all. It's not. Where there used to be subtle fogginess, somebody was just asking me a week or 2 ago from Pemako Sangha that there has been this really gray and really thick fogginess, like this depressive fogginess in his practice, and he's now, I think, perfected 6th Trevor. He was just writing about this in Facebook Sangha, and he was writing me about, like a couple of weeks ago, that he feels this very thick fog, like a gray fog, that seems impenetrable. And if you have had, and we all have had some depression in our life, but if we have had like that kind of depression, that, or close to that kind of depression, that it paralyzes you. It's so thick that it almost paralyzes you, that you have to really make effort to get up from the bed and start doing things and get things done, or close to it anyway. I'm talking about really thick fog. That fog used to be there in my practice as well, but it's not there anymore. So thick fog that got thinner and thinner and thinner, it's almost gone now. It's sort of like, well, I couldn't say that there's a memory of it, but it's a very, very thin line anymore. So I'm talking about substrate consciousness, alaya vijnana. When I'm talking about fog, this, which is in Tibetan they have the word kunzi, which means all basis of all samsaric phenomena. So that has worn down as I have progressed through the higher bodhisattva bhumis, 7, 8, from 6th to 7, 8, 9, and still proceeding. And this has kind of made, that's how it should be said. It's sort of like, you know, we have 3 bodies. Physical body is 3-dimensional. It has 3 dimensions, basic dimensions. Mind, samsaric mind, is the same, but it's non-physical. Samsaric mind, if we think of the aura, it's a 3-dimensional space, and our thoughts and emotions and that depressing field, depressing energy, they are objects in that 3-dimensional space. So they are objects that affect our mind and mind state. So we have a physical body and non-physical mind that are 3-dimensional. Then we have basic awareness that has no dimension, is 0-dimensional. That's what emptiness means. It goes beyond the dimensionality or locationality, is that a word? Completely. So it goes beyond the 3 basic characteristics, functions, and also time and space. And because of that, as one progresses in Mahayana practice, in the insight of emptiness of all phenomena, that 3-dimensional space actually collapses. It collapses into this 0-dimensional basic awareness, or Buddha nature, or Dharmakaya. Yeah, and there's definitely a big difference between having 6 perfected or having 9 perfected. A big difference. And I always say that, like I mentioned already, that bodhicitta is the way to understand this. If there is no bodhicitta, in other words, if it's not pointed out in one way or the other, we could remain completely oblivious to it. We don't see what we don't see, what we can't see.
Kim, when you say bodhicitta is the way to understand this, you mean the cultivation of bodhicitta is a way to purify those higher bhumis. Is that what you mean?
It is both that, but bodhicitta is also means to receive a pointing out, in the sense that when we truly feel and express bodhicitta authentically, have that compassion towards others, it enables us to see the subtlemost energetic body of ours, so that we can bring the light of awareness to it. This is vipassana. Yeah. I'm talking about.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe one more point about the, because we haven't talked about dark nights, and they come into play with, because sometimes when I listen to people talk about what they believe is the case when you have perfected so and so many Bhumis. It's that it's kind of like this all that, or
Yes, yes.
that the descriptions are every day, like that. That's just how it is. But dark nights, definitely they continue, and there is of course still fluctuation, which I think is a defining aspect of samsara, is that there will be fluctuations in both mood and clarity and all of this. I mentioned that I had several months of growing irritation, disgust, negative emotions, and a thickening of the fog as well. But at one point, it of course it does release with the next perfection, where it is much clearer, and then perhaps some kind of in between or more stable period, and then it starts over again. So just wanted to mention.
Would you be able to, like you briefly described that dark night, would you be able to, that was kind of a roughish sounding dark night. Would you be able to locate it with which Bhumi perfection? Around where?
Yeah, well, I haven't. I think it perfected yesterday, so I haven't sat down and or I'm fairly certain that it perfected yesterday, but I haven't analyzed the situation properly. But I think it was the 9th, yeah. But take that with a grain of salt. Is that the correct? With a pinch of salt.
Pinch of salt.
But yeah, definitely, it went from. I think the word that describes it best is dysphoria, which is the opposite of euphoria, which is a physical hurt, like it hurts, it burns the skin, it hurts, there is no escaping it, and it's extreme. So going from that till just stabilizing. And it was quite an interesting experience, because so the first kind of hint that something was, or there has been some glimpses before this that I have also mistaken for at least maybe 10 minutes to maybe an hour, mistaken it to be a perfection before it became very evident that it wasn't. But I think it was, so yesterday was first, so not the day before that, but the day before that there was this glimpse, this moment of clarity, but it did have euphoria in it. And I have taken a picture, so I might post them aside each other to show. But then it came back full force after I think we practiced wrathful deities quite a lot the day after, and it was the worst, like the worst dysphoria and anger and like everything coming out. Then that continued for the whole 31st, like just up and down, really unstable emotionally. And then on the morning of yesterday, I sat down and practiced. I read Longchenpa's, just a short stanza of Longchenpa's Basic Space of Phenomena, and it just cleared. But it wasn't over. So I'd say that was the triggering moment for the perfection. But then there was the purification continued for all of yesterday. There was also a external event that caused a lot of things to come up. Fortunately, after that clear moment, so that but the anger left with that first. All the anger that had built up for 2 months, dysphoria left, and then what happened afterwards was just the underlying sadness started bubbling. The true cause of the self-based anger, as or the the layer below it, to put it metaphorically. And then after, and to the point, like it was so exhausting yesterday that I had like this extreme headache when sitting. And then when that left and that stabilized, it was just on a stable, different level.
Something that came to our mind as you were telling that, and then you mentioned also in relation to traditional Bhumi descriptions in sutras, is that, and also 10 fetters, like on this stage your anger disappears, or some other negative basic emotion disappears. I can't relate to that at all. I don't know how somebody would have said that. You might have heard me use the analogy of spoiled meat. You know, we can easily remove a spoiled part from a fruit or vegetable just by cutting it out, because we can cut it out. But from meat, it's very difficult to remove because it has veins and arteries, so the spoiledness spreads to the whole piece of meat. And that's a good analogy for liberating anger, for example, because our whole subtle mind is affected by this anger. So you can't just, and we have a fleshy, meaty body, figuratively speaking, so we cannot just get it out like this. You know, the whole system is spoiled by the anger or jealousy or anxiousness or fear or hatred. You know, you can't just pluck it out. So I think that it's the whole arc of practice, the whole process of it from beginning to end. It's a gradual purification, transformation of all negativity, and finally all negativity is disappears, and then we attain Buddhahood, where there are no impulses and no negative destructive states anymore. Those two. But having said that, also what comes with, to some degree, with Bhumi openings, in some sense with Bhumi openings, but really with Bhumi perfections, is that it's sort of like what the traditional Bhumi texts say, that, you know, it's sort of like on the first Bhumi perfection, it's sort of like having 100 times more free space, freedom than you used to. With second Bhumi, you have 10 times 100, 1,000 times than you had in the beginning. On third Bhumi, you have 10,000 times more free space or freedom than you had in the beginning. I think that's a good way of looking at it. And then when we get to, if we talk of great numbers like the sutras do, you know, on sixth we might be like having 1,000,000 times more freedom than we used to, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 million, 100 million, 500 million, and then billion. You know, it's kind of like I think it could be taken as a symbolical advancement of Bhumi perfections in the subtle body. The subtle body is made of, depending on scripture, it's made of, you know, numbers such as 70,000 or 400,000 nadis are mentioned. I think that we have as many nadis, if we think that our whole subtle body was full of hairs, long hairs, extending from the heart and from the center line, center channel to the edge of the aura. That's how many nadis we have. I think that's way more than 500,000. So if we kind of compare those descriptions with our subtle body, it kind of makes sense. Emptiness of all phenomena, Mahayana insight advancing after the Arhat 7, 8, 9, 10. It's kind of like, it kind of makes sense that because that substrate consciousness relating to 7, 8, 9, 10, it's kind of this mass through which the emptiness inside of all phenomena penetrates through. Millions and millions of points of confusion getting released.
Is it that we all have all these nadis and they're just sort of dormant, and with practice we activate more and more of them, so our life force, our perception, everything is developing with their activation, is the nadis?
No, it is not correct to say that they are dormant or passive. They are active, but they generate samsaric states. For example, depression that was mentioned is a very common samsaric state that is caused by 7, 8, 9, 10 Bhumis, those thick fogs. And this is a very common experience. So it's not like they are completely inactive or dormant. They are there, but they generate samsaric experience. Because winds keep blowing, prana, vital energy, keeps blowing through the system. So somebody is very nervous, very restless, has mania, is like a manic in terms of emotions. Somebody is depressed, somebody is angry, somebody is anxious. And that happens because prana flows through the subtle body and develops our vision of our vision, our perception of our confusion, completely depending on our stored habits, stored karma. The prana just makes the programs stored, files stored in our system, enables it to create our everyday experience, which is artificial, which is fantasy, which is fantasized. Dream after dream after dream that we believe and take as true. This is what samsara is. So, yeah. Openings and perfections help us through it. It's like a breaking or removing the dirt in the system bit by bit. And soon there are a bunch of people in the Sangha, men and women, who are done with the process. Finally, after years and years of really hard study and practice that I've done and we've done together, finally we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel, in the sense that Pemako won't be a working hypothesis anymore. It will be a proven method. Just like, methods that are now established. At some point, somebody proved those methods by becoming a Buddha. So, but I was just asking, a week ago I sent an email to those people whose accounts are in What's Next book, their personal accounts, and I've thought about this, you know, talking about attainments and stages is already a new thing and a kind of revolutionary thing in the field of Dharma that, well, somebody can understand and like and fall in love with, but also there's a lot of resistance towards it because of opinions and views, and that's fine. But I've given it some thought during the past 6 months or so that we've talked about, for example, in this video I briefly mentioned that there are few arhats joining this session, but a week ago I sent an email to those who have accounts in the book and asked them to rewrite their accounts, because it's been over 2 years and it would be helpful for others to have updated accounts. And they have had much change in their state of mind, so there's much more material now to have in the book. But I think that the accounts will stop at perfection of 9th Bhumi. Perfection of 10th means that the whole karmic body is purified, and therefore one is a 11th Bhumi attained Buddha, wakeful 24/7. And but in a sense I don't see a problem of at some point publicly telling the whole story, how it starts and how it ends. But having said that, I don't always want to be the guy whose name and reputation is, there's so much shit I've had to take over the years that I think that these accounts have to stop at 9th. Having said that, I don't know if that will, stop the shit from coming, but I'll just say that it has been very, 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 I've cried so many times over years for doing this, what I do. And it has been very hurtful. And I get, shit in my email box and shit in my messenger from complete strangers who just feel like throwing shit at me because I've talked about this publicly and openly. They are just people who are so have so fundamentalist views that it makes people like myself targets to pour their negativity on people like myself and others who do the same. So what I'm saying is that in one sense it would be very fantastic to have public accounts from beginning to an end, but well, maybe there's actually a solution to that by not having an author for the book. Like nobody wrote the book, nobody's name is on the cover, so maybe that's a way to solve that. I'm kind of joking, but if there was a way to do that. But having said that, maybe I will publish the book. I don't know. Maybe in 5 years from now, when there are, is it almost 10 or over 10 Buddhas based on divinations and based on looking at the progress of practice with individual Sangha members, maybe then we will publish the book. Anyway, despite of the hatred. Luke.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about Lama Lisa's description of Dilgo Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, with his spontaneity and his enlightenment. And I was thinking that in all likelihood, if he was in like our countries, one of our countries, he'd probably be classified as mentally ill and probably hospitalized somehow. And you know, we live in countries where, and cultures where it's all about productivity. What do you do? Meet someone new. You know, what do you do? You know, it's how we live in the West. And you know, I think it's magnificent what you do and like what we're doing. And I think it's noble in terms of practice and to gain true, you know, awareness, insight into our true selves, into our true beings. And but there is that undeniable, and you've just referred to yourself with, you know, maybe changing your name or taking flack, you know, there is this clash where we come from, you know. When you try and describe to some people what we do, it's like, you know, I feel like I just get a blank stare from a lot of people, you know. So I mean, yeah, it is like, it is a strange sort of dynamic, like pursuing this path, but also trying to relate with or live in Western countries, you know. I suppose that's one of the old questions.
Yeah, and it's about subjective experience. So, you know, nobody's opinions can change one's first-hand experience. But it would be, of course, wonderful to live in a world of peace and harmony. But that is a long call, long shot. So, it is like looking at what you said, Luke. In different masters have called this age a dharma degrading age. Is that the word, degrading?
Mm-hmm.
Like dark age of dharma. And yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's especially because of the fact that so few are reaping instant benefits from their dharma practice, whether Buddhist or otherwise, why we need methods that and techniques that really work well, that perform, that deliver. I think it's exactly because of that when quick measures and effective measures are needed. And it's also been said, I think it was Guru Rinpoche in one of his accounts said that because the time is so dark, that's why there's much more benefit in practice in general. But also if somebody turns to him for support and blessings, he will give it tenfold or manyfold, just because this is so dark, this age. So like when meeting people who are completely unfamiliar with pragmatic dharma, completely unfamiliar with this way of representing the dharma and practicing the dharma with public discussion and open discussion and without taboos, without dogmas, it is understandable that people go like, huh? What? Well, that sounds like a red flag. You know, that's inevitable. Liz, did you have something?
I just wondered, over the years, does it bother you less that, you know, the flack that you get, does it bother you less the closer you become to enlightenment? I mean, I know that stuff generally bothers me less. Even now, I'm only 2 years doing it. I know that things that people would have said 2 years ago would have bothered me, and it doesn't bother me now. And I'm just wondering, is it just that the flak is getting worse for you? You know, you're getting more and more of it, and it's worse because of social media. It's so hard. Or is there a hope that, you know, you would become so enlightened that you'd understand that the people that are saying this stuff are so stuck in their samsaric ideals and their judgments that it, you know, that it won't bother you? I would hope that would be the case.
Yes, that is the case. And it does hurt less and less. But at the same time, it's been in a sense, you know, some of it can be used for practice, abuse. But you also want to get out of the abusive situation. If you didn't, that wouldn't make sense. That would not be commonsensical to stay in abusive situation. So I do have a compassion towards all beings. Like I don't. Perhaps it has, the flack that I've gotten has somehow helped me become more compassionate, helped me to understand bodhicitta better, maybe. But yeah. There's also the thing that abuse from those who inflict it on others creates karma for them. And that's just very serious karma when abusing Dharma teachers. Or abusing Dharma in general, Dharma teachings. Analyzing and having critical thought is perfectly fine, but not throwing shit and abusing, that's completely different. Was it Oscar who had something?
No, I was thinking about just what you said, like there is the karmic things that happens to themselves. Like in future lifetimes, there is no way they will be able to connect with Pemaku, I guess. Like according to my logic, if there is a lot of hatred, and also like it disturbs others' connection, maybe it could. But yeah, you basically said that. So yeah.
We should be very, very mindful and careful about our actions. But this is really a commonsensical, this is a basic ethical discussion. Like you don't, a reasonable person understands the difference between the message and the messenger. And that's the whole point here. Kedar.
I have a Zen friend close to where I'm living here, and he always jokes that the Zen center that he sort of operates in always brings in folks who have lots of depression and anxiety and anger, and some of the dynamics that I hear about from him in there, you know, at the Zendo is very almost disturbing sometimes, but it's these people that have so much, I guess, the way he describes it, has so many problems that they torment and lash out even to the folks running the Zendo, who are just trying to have, you know, a space to practice. So it's very interesting to me, and always, I mean, add to that an online forum that's where you can be anonymous. And so I think success in any measure is always followed by a group that is alienated and then attacks it. And so I think this is just another one of those things. But coming back around, there's many similarities of Buddhism to the religion that I had growing up, and I mentioned this too, I think, Swaminarayan. And you know, the same thing, guru structure and passing down of sort of empowerments of various types, and lots of chanting and whatnot. So the truth is in how long this has been going on in the past, right? For decades, for centuries. And just because the West in its current state can't seem to operate, you know, in with this sort of mix, doesn't mean that we should still continue to move it along and try to bring those folks out of their despair. That's my sort of opinion on it, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think it's there was a short video presentation by American Zen teacher called Brad Warner. He's this hardcore Zen fellow, a nice guy, old punk rock musician, and he had a short video of where he discussed scandals in Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. There has been a couple of big ones in a few recent years, and he was saying that, you know, it's only very few Dharma organizations that are big in the sense that they have thousands of members and many centers around the world. And then you have the head teacher or headmaster of that organization. But that these big groups are a rarity in the field. And I really like that. I like having, you know, sanghas. Most sanghas were always small historically. Like when there was a Mahasiddha in whatever tradition, she or he had such, you know, like a relatively small group of students and followers. So there was like a one-on-one relationship and, you know, close-knit sanghas. And I think that's how it should be, that there is a closeness and sense of togetherness, authentic sense of togetherness in the sangha. Yeah, but you in the beginning when you said that, you know, what is that word? Not extracting, but becoming like a small closed group. That's of course like it's a strange thought that, you know, just a few days ago I remember in the Osho documentary, you know, they came up with their own private army with machine guns and everything because the outer world didn't act as they would have wanted to have them act. So well, that's a sign that the Bhumis are closed, all of them. So, you know, if you have people with real insight, you don't declare a war to people who don't agree with you. That's just how it is. Or create other, you know, strange and weird ideas. There was two and a half years ago, it was one of the first times when I was in teaching in UK. There was 3 years ago, there was this England and Ireland based Buddhist group who asked me to become their new teacher, and the groups merged, and one of those old students from the previous group wrote a question and asked that, well, can we trust you? You know, you don't have a lineage, you don't have a senior teacher who you could talk to, or who would supervise your, you know, whatever you're doing with us. So, you know, how can we trust you, man? And I was reading that paper like, huh, what? I've been a couple of times, I've been thinking that moment, that, you know, thinking about the dynamics of that moment. But there is no answer to that question other than having first-hand insight of the nature of mind. That's where the subjective experience and confidence come from there only, not from what the teacher says, not from what the Sangha members say, not what the scriptures say. It is only in the nature of mind when questions, perhaps doubts, confusions cease. Even if it is I think it was in the beginning of this retreat, I was talking about samsaric mind and then nature of mind. I used the analogy of a volcano that spits fiery stones, lava. So no matter how hot, how burning the lava, how destructive the lava is, it cools down when it meets the ocean. No matter what, everything cools down in that ocean, in that recognition. And you know, what we have talked now over 2 hours is that it's a subjective experience, and it is absolutely essential that people have these experiences, awakening experiences. Everything else is secondary. Everything else can be helpful and supportive, but none of our confusion leaves us, gets liberated, if we don't have those awakening experiences, Bhumi openings and perfections. And that is fantastic from one point of view. That is heartbreaking from another point of view, from the point of view that there are so many practitioners out there who don't have results, who don't have those insights. So let's say a prayer together that may genuine Dharma, may authentic insight spread like wildfire among all sentient beings. And that's where the real authority in each of our lives as beings comes from. Let's take a break for 15 minutes and then continue with practice. Thank you so much for this discussion. Thank you very much.